She was a commander. Now she's a mother. Commander Tarala had led over a dozen starship sieges, vaporized rebel strongholds without blinking, and broken traitors with nothing more than a word. In the Dominion fleet, her name was spoken with awe and fear. She had been built for power, trained for war, and genetically enhanced to feel no weakness, no distraction, no desire. And then she crashed. Her ship went down on a green, humid jungle moon, a forgotten planet on the edge of human space. Her systems failed, her comms were dead, she was alone and bleeding, not used to that. She limped through the undergrowth, smoke trailing behind her, pain buzzing through her leg like an angry wasp. Trees towered over her, thick vines brushing her armored shoulders. Strange birds called from the canopy. She had no food, no weapon, just instinct. And then she saw the firelight. It flickered between the leaves, orange, warm, human. She crept closer, silent as a predator. What she found made her freeze. There, beside the fire, sat a man, broad-chested, tan, shirtless, and barefoot. His hair was messy, beard short and rough. He looked up slowly as if he had known she was coming. He was chewing something, meat, on a stick, and when their eyes met, he smiled. "Well, damn," he said, licking his thumb. "Did the sky just drop an angry goddess into my backyard?" Tarala blinked. What kind of soldier was this? No fear, no salute, not even a weapon in his hand, just raw, confident man. "I am Commander Tarala of the Dominion Fleet," she said coldly, leveling her gaze. "You will assist me or face execution." He laughed, not nervously, not mockingly, just like she was a joke and he loved it. "Sorry, sweetheart. Around here we use first names. I'm Mason." He tossed her a water flask. "You look like you're 2 steps from falling over." She was, but she didn't admit it. He fed her, cleaned her wound, let her sit under the shelter he'd built from starship debris and jungle wood. She thought he was simple at first, crude, maybe even stupid. But then that night he asked about her armor's fusion links, and fixed one, with jungle tools. Her scanners had barely finished analyzing his DNA when they started sending odd reports. Human physiology was chaotic, noisy, unstable. But Mason's readings were different. His temperature ran hot. His heart was ridiculously strong, and there was something else. She found herself staring at his arms, his hands, his jaw, his smile, and at something else when he walked out of the shower pod without a towel. She turned away quickly, but not before her cheeks warmed. Dominion females didn't blush, not ever. Her body reacted strangely. She chalked it up to injury, malfunction. But then he touched her, just her wrist, brushing past her to grab a tool, and her knees almost buckled. Heat surged through her core. Her pupils dilated. Internal sensors flared warnings she didn't understand. "What is this?" she demanded later, scanning herself. "Gonna need context, Commander," Mason said, sipping tea by the fire. "My body. It's unstable." He smirked. "I've been told I have that effect." She glared. He grinned. That night she sat closer to the fire, closer to him. Not for warmth, her armor regulated temperature, but she wanted to see his eyes. When he looked at her, she wanted to feel what her body kept begging for: connection, heat, flesh. When the rain came, he pulled her inside the shelter. When she didn't protest, he moved closer. And when she didn't stop him, his hands found her skin. No male of her species had ever touched her like this. No male of any species had ever made her body tremble. Her legs locked around him. Her voice, always so controlled, broke into sounds she'd never heard before. He didn't stop until she begged. Afterwards, her head rested against his chest and she listened to his heartbeat, steady, wild, real. "This is impossible," she whispered. "Just biology, sweetheart," he muttered, eyes already closing. "Good old human over-engineering." Weeks passed. She didn't leave. She couldn't. Her body began to change. Internal scans detected a new signal, a heartbeat. Tiny. Not hers. Pregnant. That was supposed to be impossible. She didn't tell Mason right away. Just watched him, how he moved, how he laughed, how he hunted and built and spoke to her like she wasn't a weapon. When she finally told him, he didn't panic. He just looked at her, grinned, and said, "Told you I was potent." She hit him with a pillow, and then kissed him. Because somehow, in a jungle no Dominion map ever marked, in a shelter made from sticks and dreams, she wasn't Commander Tarala anymore. She was a woman, a mate, a mother, and for the first time in her life, she didn't want to be anywhere else. Tarala didn't sleep much after that first night. Her Dominion instincts wouldn't let her. Even lying beside Mason, her muscles twitched at every sound, every chirp, every rustle of leaves. But it wasn't just the jungle that kept her awake. It was him. His body was warm beside hers, even when he wasn't touching her. She could feel the heat he gave off, like a furnace wrapped in skin. Her species ran cold, logically so. Dominion males were efficient in form, but utterly boring in bed. Sex, for her kind, was just biology. Clinical, for reproduction only. No pleasure. No mess. No Mason. He snored softly, one arm draped over her waist like it belonged there. And Tarala, battle-hardened and half-cybernetic, didn't move. She just let him hold her. The next morning, she sat outside the shelter, while he chopped jungle fruit with a blade made from old starship metal. He was shirtless again, on purpose, she was sure. Sweat rolled down his chest as he worked. She pretended not to stare. "You're doing it again," Mason said, not looking up. She stiffened. "Doing what?" "Watching me like I'm a dessert tray." "I do not consume dessert trays," he laughed. "Bet you'd consume me, though." She stood up so fast she nearly tripped over the fire pit. "I do not engage in primitive flirting rituals," she snapped, brushing imaginary dirt from her armor. Mason grinned, teeth white against his tanned face. "Didn't seem so primitive. Last night." Her cheeks burned. Again. Her internal temperature readout spiked. She told herself it was faulty wiring. Later, she ran diagnostics on herself for the 6th time in 2 days, but the readings didn't lie. Her blood chemistry was shifting. Faster pulse, dilated pupils, increased serotonin and oxytocin, hormones associated with bonding, arousal, and mating readiness. Her species didn't produce those in large amounts. But now, being near this insane, charming, reckless human was rewriting her entire biology. Needed answers. "Why do you affect me this way?" she demanded that evening, arms crossed over her chest as she stared down at him. He was sprawled on a hammock made from vines and scrap fabric, chewing on roasted meat. He raised an eyebrow. "Affect you how exactly?" "Every time you are near, my blood heats, my pupils dilate, my breath gets heavier," he offered. She scowled. "Yes," he nodded, serious now. "Tarala, do you know how Dominion males are built?" She blinked. "Of course I do." "Then maybe your body's just figured something out before your brain did." He sat up, muscles rippling beneath his skin. "You were designed for dominance, discipline, and obedience, not for love, not for joy, not for fun." She swallowed hard. "Those are inefficient distractions. They're what make life worth living." She didn't answer. That night she touched him first. She placed a single hand on his chest, palm flat over his heartbeat. His eyes searched hers, asking a silent question. She nodded. This time it wasn't fire or hunger. It was exploration. He undressed her carefully. Not like Dominion engineers taking apart a machine, but like someone who wanted to understand every piece of her. Her cool lavender skin against his bronze warmth made her shiver in the best way. When they came together, again it wasn't rough. It wasn't fast. It was slow, deep, and completely unlike anything her body had ever experienced. And something inside her broke open, in a good way. They stayed tangled like that for hours. No words, just shared breath and soft touches. Days passed. Then, a week. She stopped calling him human, started calling him Mason. She laughed once by accident when he slipped in the river. She slapped a mosquito off his back and didn't even pretend it was a military reflex. She began to hum when she cooked for him, even though she didn't know where the melody came from. Mason carved her a knife from bone and said, "For my jungle queen." She rolled her eyes but kept it on her hip every day after. Then the nausea started. At first she thought it was the water, or jungle fever, but her body was healthy, her immune system perfect, so she checked her internal scans again. The results made her sit down fast. Pregnancy. Dominion scan confirmed. Implantation confirmed. Species match. Hybrid detected. Father. Homo sapiens. It was impossible. Dominion females. Didn't conceive from outside species. Their reproductive systems were regulated. Blocked from interspecies contamination, as the scientists called it. Unless her biology had changed because of him. Unless he had activated something that had always been there, hidden by Dominion control, waiting for the right spark. She looked at Mason across the fire. He was skinning a fruit, whistling, humming a Terran tune. Not a soldier, not a scientist. Just a man, but her body, her entire self, had chosen him. And now she wasn't just Tarala the commander. She was something more, something terrifying, something beautiful. She was a mother, and Mason, he was about to find out. Tarala stood at the edge of the camp staring into the trees. Her hand rested on her stomach, flat, toned, armored. But beneath it, something had changed. Something was growing. A hybrid. Her body had accepted human DNA. More than accepted it. Welcomed. Adapted to it. And now, without Dominion permission or science interference, her womb carried something no one in the galaxy had seen before. A child, half Dominion, half Mason. She had fought in 17 wars. She had crushed rebellion with her bare hands. But now she was sweating more from standing still than she ever had in combat. This wasn't battle. This was vulnerability. And Mason, he was fishing. Barefoot again. His pants rolled up. Shirt draped across a branch. His back muscles moved like sculpted iron as he yanked a wriggling fish from the river and tossed it into a basket. He noticed her watching and grinned. "Careful, Commander. You keep looking at me like that, you're gonna make me blush." She, rolled her eyes, but her face heated anyway. "Mason," she said, her voice tighter than usual. "Yeah? We need to talk." He blinked. His grin dropped slightly. He knew those words. Every man in the galaxy knew them. He dropped the next fish, dried his hands on his pants, and walked up to her slowly. "Okay, hit me." She hesitated. Her throat felt tight. No training for this. "You remember when I said our biology was incompatible?" she asked. He nodded. "Yeah. You also said I snore, but here we are still sharing a bed." She ignored that. "It seems I was wrong." Mason tilted his head. "How wrong?" "Wrong enough that I'm carrying evidence." He stared at her for a moment, then blinked, then blinked again. "Wait, like carrying? Yes. As in, inside you? Yes. As in, we're having a baby?" She crossed her arms. "I believe that is the correct Terran phrasing." There was silence. Then Mason's mouth opened. No words came out. Then finally, he whispered, "Damn, I really am built different." She nearly punched him. "I'm serious," he said, raising his hands. "You're telling me your body, your cold, genetically perfect, combat-trained warrior body picked me? Out of all the bioengineered warlords and six-eyed spacesuiters? I mean, that's flattering, Tarala." She scowled. "This is not a mating contest," he grinned. "Sure feels like I just won." She turned away to hide the twitch in her lips. It might have been the start of a smile. She didn't want to admit that. But, "Are you okay?" he asked more softly now, stepping closer. "You don't seem happy." Tarala exhaled slowly. Her shoulders dropped. "I don't know what I am," she admitted. "For the first time in my life, I'm not following orders. I'm not wearing a uniform. I'm not thinking about targets or protocols. I'm growing something inside me, something alive, something innocent." Mason took her hand. "I'm scared too, you know," he said. "I've fought monsters, watched friends die, buried more than I've saved. But this, you and me, building something new, it's the first fight that actually means something." She looked at him, really looked at him. He was still rough around the edges, still wild, still weird, still very human, but something inside her softened, melted. She didn't pull away. That night, they lay close in the hammock, his fingers tracing gentle lines across her lower belly. She rested her head on his chest and for once didn't think about war until the warning beacon pinged. They both sat up fast. "What was that?" Mason asked, already reaching for his rifle. Tarala's eyes narrowed. Her old implant, dormant for weeks, had just reactivated. The signal was faint but familiar. "Dominion tracking probe," she said coldly. "Close." "How close?" She looked toward the trees. "Too close." Within minutes, they were moving. Mason grabbed a pack, rifle, rations, emergency power cell, and slung it over one shoulder. Tarala had already donned her half-repaired armor, pieces rattling where vines had replaced wiring. Her old blaster sparked when she powered it on. Good enough. They didn't run, yet. The jungle made stealth easier. They stuck to the shadows. "Mason," she said quietly as they crept through the brush. "Yeah? They won't be here to negotiate. I figured. They'll try to retrieve me, terminate you. And if they find out about the pregnancy..." He cut her off. "They're not taking you. Or the kid." She glanced at him. His jaw was tight, his eyes hard. She'd seen him laugh, tease, joke. But now he looked like a man who would burn down the galaxy to protect his family. And that was what they were, wasn't it? A family. That made her heart ache. In a good way. But the signal grew stronger. They stopped on a ridge overlooking a swampy clearing. Below, a sleek silver pod had landed. Dominion. Elite scouts stepped out, 4 of them. Drones hovered above them like silent watchers. One of the soldiers removed his helmet, revealing pale skin, sharp features, and blackened eyes. Commander Dethran, her former second-in-command. He scanned the area. "Commander Tarala," he called out in that dry, surgical tone of his. "Surrender. Yourself for debriefing. Your condition will be handled accordingly." Mason frowned. Handled accordingly sounds like cut open and disposed of. Tarala didn't answer. Her grip on her blaster tightened. "You've been contaminated," Dethran continued. "You are no longer compatible with Dominion hierarchy. Surrender now and your suffering will be minimal." Mason raised his rifle. Tarala stopped him. "No," she said. "They're mine." She stood up, stepped forward, and revealed herself. Dethran's face twitched. "Tarala." "Not anymore," she said. "I'm not yours. I'm not the Dominion's. I'm not a number in your system." She pulled off her helmet. "I am something new." Mason stepped out behind her, weapon raised. Dethran's eyes narrowed. "You're pregnant." Tarala smiled. "Yes, and I dare you to try and stop me." Before the Dominion team could react, Mason opened fire. Tarala moved beside him, her blaster howling. Trees shattered. Drones exploded. The fight had begun, and they were ready to burn it all down. The jungle burned. Green, leaves hissed into steam as plasma shots tore through trees, igniting thick vines and splitting bark with white-hot heat. Dominion scouts advanced through the smoke, their helmets reflecting firelight, their drones buzzing like metal wasps. And at the center of it all, 2 figures stood their ground. Mason's rifle barked with each pull of the trigger. One shot dropped a drone mid-scan. Another shattered the visor of a soldier's helmet. He moved like a predator, fast, brutal, unrelenting. Beside him, Tarala fought like something from legend. No longer stiff and cold in Dominion regulation stance, she moved fluidly, armor scorched and mismatched, blaster sizzling in one hand, a serrated blade in the other. Her violet skin glowed in the flickering firelight, and her dark braid whipped over her shoulder as she ducked and struck, her motions savage but controlled. Dominion soldiers fell. Mason caught a glimpse of her from the corner of his eye and thought, "Damn, that's my girl." Then a drone shot clipped his shoulder and he grunted, ducking behind a tree. The impact spun him, but he kept his feet. Trala was already beside him, yanking him back by his vest. "You're bleeding," she snapped. "Just a scratch," Mason growled, teeth gritted. "You should see the other guy." She ripped a stim patch from her belt and slapped it against his wound without ceremony. "You are reckless." "I'm a man who's got something to fight for," he shot back. "And she's standing in front of me, pregnant with our kid, looking hotter than a solar flare." Tarala blinked. She was still learning the layers of human speech, and Mason's way of saying outrageous things while bleeding never failed to throw her off. But there was something about the way he said it. Soft under the grit, raw under the bravado that made her heart hammer. "You're insane," she muttered. He smirked, teeth red-stained. "Takes one to love one." She dragged him to his feet. They were outnumbered and outgunned. Standard Dominion tactics would say, retreat and regroup. But Tarala had never felt more alive. This wasn't about duty. This wasn't about rank. This was personal. They sprinted through the trees, dodging blaster fire and ducking under low-hanging vines. Smoke curled behind them, rising from the bodies of the Dominion dead. The jungle had turned against their enemies, roots tripping them, mist obscuring them somewhere along the way. Mason reached for her hand. She didn't stop him. They moved as one. His instincts, her training, their connection synced like it had been written in their bones. When they reached the cliffside shelter, an old mining alcove sealed with vines and stone, Mason kicked the emergency panel. The old door groaned open just as another volley of plasma fire lit up the clearing behind them. Tarala shoved Mason inside first. Down. They hit the ground as the cave door slammed shut, sealing them in darkness. Silence. Just the sound of their breath, the hum of energy in the walls, and her heartbeat, and his. They lay there for a moment. Close, touching, her legs tangled with his. His hand pressed against her belly, not out of fear but out of instinct. He didn't pull away. "You okay?" he whispered, voice raw. "Yes." "Baby?" "Still with us." Mason let out a shaky breath and rolled onto his back, staring at the stone ceiling. "That was insane," he said. "You started it," she replied. He chuckled, then winced. "Okay, so maybe next time we skip the part where I get shot?" She turned to him. Her fingers brushed his cheek, soot-smeared, stubbled, strong. "You saved me," she said quietly. "Kind of a theme, isn't it?" he murmured, his hand covering hers. "You keep nearly dying, I keep showing up. We're like a bad romance hollow." She laughed. Laughed. A real one, from deep in her chest. Mason froze. "I'm sorry. Was that a giggle, Commander?" "It was a glitch," she snapped, trying to hide the heat rushing to her face. "Uh-huh. Totally believable." They sat in the shelter for hours. The Dominion wasn't stupid. They'd regroup, maybe scan for them, but for now they were safe. Tarala leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. "You know," Mason said, voice low. "You're not the woman I met 3 weeks ago." She raised an eyebrow. "I'm still dangerous." "Oh, you're terrifying," he agreed, smiling. "But now, you're also warm and stubborn and soft sometimes and really, really good at making fish stew." She gave him a mock glare. "You're the same. Infuriating. Shirtless too often. Jokes when you should be serious, but..." Looked down at her, But what? You remind me I'm more than what they made me. He didn't answer at first, just tightened his arm around her waist, resting his hand protectively over the small swell of her belly. You've always been more, he whispered. They just tried to convince you otherwise. They kissed, soft at first, then deeper. Fingers found skin. Armor fell away. It wasn't desperate this time. It was intentional, a claiming, a confession, a quiet promise in the dark. And later, lying tangled in the warm silence, he whispered against her neck, "When this is over, I want to build something with you. A base? A life." She said nothing, but she didn't move away, didn't correct him, didn't deny how her body curled toward his on instinct, as if it already knew what her mind was still trying to believe. She was his, he was hers, and now, they weren't just fighting to survive, they were fighting for a future. Tarala had always been a weapon, forged in labs, hardened in battle, celebrated in war. Her body was stronger than most soldiers, her mind sharper than any diplomat's. From the moment she was grown, yes, grown, not born, her purpose was set. Obey, enforce, eliminate. Now, she stood in the dark, inside a half-buried shelter on a forgotten jungle moon, watching her lover sleep beside a makeshift fire. Her armor was off, her weapons laid aside, and under her skin, new life pulsed. Not a mission, not an order, but a heartbeat. A child, his child, half dominion, half human, impossible, unlawful, beautiful. And she knew, deep in her marrow, that the dominion would kill to erase it. Her fingers hovered over her belly, where she could already feel the faintest flutters of growth. Not quite kicks yet, just presence. A pressure that was both terrifying and comforting. Behind her, Mason stirred. He never slept long. Years of survival instinct had honed him into something half-feral, not unlike her. "You're up," he mumbled, voice still thick with sleep. "I never went down," she replied, not turning. He sat up, rubbing his neck. "Nightmares?" "Worse," she said. "Memories." Mason stood and wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. She didn't ask for it. He didn't ask if she needed it. That was the thing with him. He just knew. "They'll come back," she said softly. "The Dominion doesn't let things slip through their fingers." Mason exhaled. "Then we make sure we slip hard enough they can't catch us." She turned to face him. "You don't understand what they're capable of." He cupped her jaw gently, his thumb brushing the line of her cheek. "Then help me understand. I don't care how powerful they are. I've got a rifle, a sharp tongue, and a death wish. I'll bring them down one sarcastic insult at a time." She smiled, weakly, but it faded as quickly as it came. "You joke, but they're not afraid of guns, or bravery, or even rebellion." Her voice grew colder. "They're afraid of change, of anyone rewriting their perfect little genetic codebook." Mason nodded slowly. "And we just rewrote it with, well, love, and some extremely enthusiastic biology." "Exactly," she said. "They can't allow it. If they find us, they'll kill me, dissect the baby, erase you." He kissed her forehead. "They'll have to go through me first." A soft chime echoed from the back of the shelter. Tarala's old Dominion beacon, the one she thought she disabled, lit up red. Her heart sank. "They're close," she said. Mason was already moving. Within minutes, they were packed. The jungle beyond the shelter crackled with energy. Mason's instincts prickled. He could feel it. The air had changed, heavier, like a storm about to break. They moved through the vines in silence, every footstep calculated. Tarala had ditched her Dominion badge. Her armor, once silver and pristine, was now painted in jungle greens and matte blacks. She wasn't a soldier anymore. She was a fugitive, a mother, and no one would touch what was hers. By mid-morning, they reached a ridge above the Basin Valley. Below, a sleek interceptor-class Dominion dropship was landing, twice the size of the previous one. Reinforcements. Mason cursed. "Big boys are here." Trala scanned the ship with her eye implant. "Heavy troopers. 10 minimum. Plus 2 officers, probably enhanced." Mason narrowed his eyes. "Let me guess. They're not here to drop off cookies." "Not unless the cookies are laced with brain-dissolving nanites," she muttered. They retreated back into the brush. Hiding was no longer an option. "We need off this planet," she said. "You said the shuttle we came in on was fried." "It was," she said, then paused. "But there might be another way." Mason raised an eyebrow. "Please tell me it involves something fast, armed, and with a working toilet." Trala smirked. "There's an old Dominion outpost on the far side of the moon, hidden inside a cliff face. It's a refueling and surveillance station, automated, quiet, and forgotten. Except by you. I helped build it," she said. Mason's eyes lit up. "Then what the hell are we waiting for?" Trala hesitated. "There's a catch," she said. "Of course there is. I disabled the AI before I went rogue, but if it's been reset, it might not let us in. Worse, it might alert the fleet." Mason just shrugged. "So worst case, we hack it and steal a ship. Best case, we fly out of here like smugglers with a hell of a secret in your belly." "Optimism is not a survival trait." "Neither is pessimism," he said, touching her stomach gently. "But this is worth the risk." They left that night. It took 3 days to reach the cliffs, dodging patrols, hiding from drones, moving only in darkness. Trala was slower now. Her body was changing, adjusting to the new life inside her. Her steps were heavier, her balance slightly off. Mason never said a word about it. He just carried more of the gear and kept walking at her pace. Sometimes she caught him watching her, not in fear, not in frustration, just wonder. No Dominion male had ever looked at her like that. When they reached the outpost, the entrance was buried in moss and vines. A single blinking light betrayed its presence. Trala pressed her palm to the access plate. It scanned her. Read. Denied. She cursed. "It's not recognizing my ID. They wiped my credentials." "Then we break in," Mason said. "You can't. Just hack a Dominion security node with a..." He kicked the panel. Hard. It sparked. The red light flickered, then turned green. Trala stared at him. Mason grinned. "Don't question my methods." They stepped inside. The air was sterile and cold. The lights flickered on automatically. Trala moved ahead, checking systems. No signs of recent use. No alert sent. No AI greeting. It was dead. Perfect. The outpost had a single shuttle docked in a vertical shaft. Small, but space-worthy. Mason ran diagnostics while Trala activated the old medical station. She scanned herself and the baby. Stable, healthy, heartbeat strong. She exhaled for the first time in days. Then the alarm sounded. Not from inside, outside. Mason ran in. "They're here." "How?" "They found our heat trail. We were sloppy, or lucky too long." She looked at the shuttle, the baby, then at him. "We fly now," she said. Agreed. They sprinted to the hangar bay. Behind them, boots echoed through the halls. Dominion voices barked orders. Mason climbed into the pilot seat, Trala right, behind him. As the engines roared to life, the blast door at the far end exploded inward. Blaster fire rained down. Mason yanked the controls. The shuttle screamed out of the cliffside like a phoenix tearing free of a volcano. Shots missed them by meters. The sky opened up ahead. Clouds parted. Stars shone above. Mason whooped. "We're in the clear, sweetheart." Trala didn't cheer. She was staring out the viewport, hand over her belly. They weren't safe yet, but they were free. For now, and for the first time in her life, she wasn't flying toward a mission. She was flying toward a future. The stars stretched endlessly outside the shuttle window, bright, sharp, infinite. Tarala watched them in silence. They were beautiful, not just in the way Dominion propaganda painted them, cold, strategic, full of conquest, but in a real way, untouched, free. For the first time, they weren't a battlefield. They were a promise, a future. Inside the cockpit, Mason leaned back, in the pilot's seat, one hand casually resting on the controls, the other cradling a protein bar like it was gourmet cuisine. He chewed noisily. "You know," he said, "for a fugitive, you make one hell of a co-pilot." Tarala raised an eyebrow without looking at him. "I was trained in 13 piloting disciplines." He grinned. "Still, it's different when you fly for yourself." She didn't respond. Her gaze flicked down to the small scanner embedded in her wrist plate. It pulsed with 2 life signals, hers and something smaller, stronger now, growing. Mason caught her staring. "You check that thing every 20 minutes, because I care." He turned in his seat. "And that's new for you?" She hesitated. "Yes." Mason sat quietly for a beat, then leaned forward. "You were made to fight," he said, voice lower now. "But I don't think you were meant to." She blinked. "That's the same thing." "No, it's not." He stood and walked toward her, every step slow and sure. Tarala stiffened as he knelt in front of her, placing both hands on her thighs, warm, grounding. "You were built to obey orders, take lives, enforce the rules. But when I look at you now, all I see is someone who chose not to." She wanted to speak, to correct him. But the words stuck, because he was right. She had disobeyed orders, saved a human, protected a child, rejected everything she was told made her worthy of Dominion praise. And for what? For this. For him. For them. He leaned his head against her belly, lips brushing fabric. "That kid in there? They're gonna need more than a war machine. They're gonna need you." Tarala swallowed. "I don't know how to be anything else." "You already are," Mason whispered. "Look what you've done for me." She inhaled slowly, fingers trembling. She touched his hair. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she said. "I was supposed to rise in rank, command a fleet, die in glory. But now, I just want peace. I want quiet." Mason smiled against her skin. "I want you." She froze. His words weren't loud, weren't dramatic. They just were. Heavy. Solid. "You want me?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Not for your rank, not for your body, though I'm a fan," he said, with a wink. "I want you because somehow, after everything we've run from, I still can't picture a day without hearing you tell me I'm reckless and touching my face like I'm something worth saving." Her throat tightened. No one had ever told her that before. Not like this. Not without duty wrapped around the words. Not without obligation. "Then you should know the truth," she said suddenly. His smile faded. "What truth?" She stood and walked to the viewport, her arms folded, back tense. "When I was still Dominion," she began, "I was tasked with eliminating a human colony on the Outer Rim, suspected rebel activity. No proof, just orders." Mason's face darkened. "We landed at night. I breached their defenses in under an hour. Inside there was only one family, no weapons, just a woman and her son." Her voice cracked slightly. She hadn't spoken of this in years. Maybe never. The boy was 7. He ran to protect her when we stormed the shelter. I saw fear in his eyes, and something else. Defiance. She closed her eyes. I hesitated. I didn't fire. I told my team to stand down. She turned to face him. They disobeyed. Executed them both. Said I'd gone soft. Filed it in the logs as collateral efficiency. Mason's jaw clenched. That night, I stole a shuttle and never went back. Silence stretched between them. Then he stepped forward and pulled her close. Not roughly, not urgently, just fully. "You did the right thing," he said. I waited too long, she whispered. But you left. She leaned into his chest, letting herself rest there. For once, letting him be the one to hold the weight. You've carried guilt, Mason said, but guilt only lives in people who care. The Dominion wanted a machine, but you became human. She snorted softly. Don't insult yourself. He kissed her hair. I'm proud to be half the man it took to wake your soul. They stood like that for a long time. Eventually, Mason pulled back, clearing his throat. We need a plan. You always say that right before something explodes. This time I'm thinking long term. Tarala blinked. You mean? Yeah, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. We find a place, hide out, build something real. You want a home? I want our home. For you, me, and her. Tarala's eyes narrowed. Her? Mason grinned. I've been getting girl vibes, just a gut feeling. You base life decisions on gut feelings? It hasn't failed me yet, he said, gesturing at her belly. Proof's right there. She rolled her eyes, but her lips curled into a smile. I may know a place, she said. Mason raised an eyebrow. Oh? An old rebel outpost, cloaked, abandoned during the Shadow Rebellion. My mother hid there once, before they took her. Mason nodded. Coordinates? I'll need to decrypt them from my memory core. You'd have a memory core? Tarala smirked. Don't all women? Mason laughed. They plotted the course. It would take 2 jumps and a gravity sling around a dying red star, but it was doable. Mason input the sequence. Destination set. Home, or what'll become one. Tarala stared at the nav console. You really believe that? He turned to her. I believe in you. And if you're there, then yeah, it's home. The engines purred. The stars outside shimmered. As the shuttle entered the jump corridor, Tarala took his hand. Her fingers, once made for strangling orders into obedience, now held the hand of a man who'd kissed her war into silence. And she knew. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The stars streaked past the shuttle's windows as they dropped out of jump space. Before them, a moon floated in the shadow of a bloated red star, its light dim like dying fire. The world below was covered in green, wrapped in fog and mystery, its signal cloaked from most Dominion scans. To anyone else, it looked like a forgotten rock, but to Tarala, it looked like hope. Mason leaned forward in the pilot's chair, squinting. Looks cozy. If cozy means haunted by space ghosts and probably covered in acid mosquitoes. Tarala smirked. You're not wrong about the mosquitoes. They descended through the atmosphere slowly. Trees emerged through the mist, tall and silver-barked, swaying in slow, heavy winds. The air was breathable, warm, thick with moisture. Birds scattered as the shuttle touched down on a vine-cracked landing pad near a crumbling stone structure, half swallowed by the jungle. The old rebel outpost. Mason stepped out first, rifle ready. Tarala followed, slower now, hand resting protectively over her belly. She felt heavy, not just physically but emotionally. Like everything in her life had been pushing her toward this moment. The door to the outpost hissed open with a groan. Inside, it smelled of old circuits and damp metal, but the power grid flickered to life as soon as she stepped inside. The AI, core recognizing her residual genoprint. Lights buzzed, screens flared. It was alive. Mason gave a low whistle. You know, for a place that's been abandoned for a decade, this thing's in better shape than half the colonies I've seen. Tarala began moving through the rooms with quiet purpose. The rebels built it well. They had to. Dominion patrols nearly wiped them out. This place, it was one of their last sanctuaries. He followed her into a room with a broken bed frame, rusted gear, and a cracked mirror on the wall. She stared at her reflection for a moment. Violet skin, war-scarred shoulders, eyes once cold and calculating, now softer, focused, different. She wasn't a commander anymore. She was a mother. They spent days repairing the outpost, powering the defense grid, restoring water filtration, reconnecting solar uplinks. Mason built furniture out of salvaged metal and wood. Tarala worked the consoles, reprogramming the AI to scan for Dominion signals and ignore all outbound pings. She scrubbed herself from the Dominion network, deleting her ID, her rank, her existence. They grew a garden in the hydroponic bay, cooked together, laughed more than either of them expected. One night, as they lay on a new bed made of old supply, crates and thick padding, Mason rested his head against her stomach and whispered, "I think she kicks when I speak. That's a good sign. Means she likes my voice." "She's probably trying to fight you," Tarala murmured, half asleep. "Just like her mother." And they both laughed. But peace never lasts long. Not in the Dominion's galaxy. It was a week later when the alert sounded. Tarala froze as the console blared, a soft chime, barely audible, but enough. Mason bolted upright. "Talk to me." "1. Ship," she said. "Scout class, but cloaked. That means one thing." "They know," Mason finished. "They found me." She turned to him. "We can't run again. Not now." He met her gaze. "Then we hold the line." They prepped the outpost for war. It wasn't much. A few drone turrets, an underground tunnel system, 2 working plasma rifles, Mason's handmade, traps, and determination. Tarala armed herself in silence. The armor was tighter now, her belly fuller. She wasn't built for combat anymore, but she didn't care. She would defend what was hers. Mason pulled a makeshift blade from his belt and handed it to her, just in case they get too close. "I don't need a blade," she said. "I have you." He kissed her once, quick, fierce. "Damn right you do." The scout ship landed just outside the clearing. Dominion colors, black and chrome. Only 2. Soldiers stepped out. Elite, quiet, efficient, not there to capture, there to kill. They approached the outpost like ghosts, moving through the trees, scanning, cloaking again. But Tarala's sensors picked them up. She waited by the entrance. Alone. Pregnant. Tired. Unarmed. At least visibly. She was the bait. As one of the soldiers stepped forward, rifle raised, Mason dropped from a tree above him, blade flashing. 1. Down. The second turned to fire. Tarala stepped into the shot. The blast hit her shoulder. She grunted, staggered, dropped to one knee, and raised her hidden sidearm. Boom. The second soldier fell, smoking. Mason rushed to her side. "You're hit." "Armor took most of it," she hissed. "But I'm going to need help standing." He grabbed her gently, helping her to her feet. His hands lingered on her belly. "Still with us?" She nodded. "I think she's tougher than both of us combined." He kissed her again. This time longer, slower. The kind of kiss you give when the storm is over, when you've survived. Hours passed. The bodies were burned. The outpost resealed. No signal left the moon. No trace of what happened. They were ghosts again. But they had each other. Months later, under the soft green light of the outpost's main atrium, Tarala gave birth. Mason was there, holding her hand, talking too much, telling jokes she didn't understand but laughed at anyway because his voice made the pain feel smaller. The baby arrived screaming, strong, healthy, with violet skin in his eyes. They named her Lyra, and when Mason held her for the first time, something in him broke open and healed all at once. "She's perfect," he whispered. Tarala, pale and exhausted, smiled faintly. "She's a miracle." They raised Lyra on that moon. Tarala taught her how to fight, not because she wanted her daughter to be a warrior, but because she wanted her to never need one. Mason taught her to laugh, to build, to question everything. They planted a tree beside the outpost every year on Lyra's birthday. A new tree. A living record of survival, of defiance, of love. The Dominion never found them again. Maybe they stopped looking, or maybe, just maybe, They finally understood. Some things can't be erased, some lives refuse to be forgotten, and some families are born from fire and forged in stars. The end.